We're about to share Jim Babka's most recent appearance on The Gary Nolan Show. We've featured The Gary Nolan Show in the past, and you will probably want to ask Jim questions about the segment you're about to hear. You could either post those questions in the comments here or send Jim an email using the Zero Aggression Project website. Zap the state and have a nice day. Jim's on Gary's show most Thursdays. This one starts with a bit of fun because Jim wouldn't tell Gary his take on Massie's primary loss until he was on the air. But Jim shares one crucial fact about Kentucky primary rules that I can't believe everyone seems to have overlooked. And on top of that, you'll find out how Tom Massie could be the next Obi-Wan Kenobi and more. Let's listen in.
I've Got a Secret, presented by Winston, the cigarette that changed America's mind about filter smoking. Winston tastes good, like a cigarette should. Now, Winston Filter Cigarettes bring you America's #1 panel show, I've Got a Secret, starring
Gary Nolan
and Jim Babka. Yeah. Hey, good morning. It is...
Tastes like a good cigarette should. That is awesome.
It's a great tasting carcinogen. It is 9:35. I always throw out the wrong time. A couple hours one way or another. Who cares? You'll still get to work. No, it is 9:35. Jim Babka is with us. We were chatting earlier this morning about Massie and the race, and he had some ideas, and I said, well, share it with me. And he said, no.
Secret.
It's going to be a secret. So, hence the I've Got a Secret.
Now I get the connection. Okay.
Yeah.
You reached pretty deep into the vault for that one.
Well, now's your chance to share. All right, so I could not pry this out of him. So now the spotlight is on.
Nearly everyone is getting this wrong. Surprise, surprise.
The Massie race.
Yes. First, they ignore you. Then they mock and ridicule you. Then they fight you. Then you win. And we are in the fight stage. And it was the largest primary fight in the history of the country. And yes, the vote total didn't work out. So here's a factoid that most people are not taking into an account. And that is that this was a really super tightly closed primary. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, in my own state, in Ohio, I can walk in, and did, on primary day and say, I want a particular party ballot, and I will get that ballot, and I will then, at that moment, convert to being, in the eyes of the state, a member of that party. I am now able to vote in that primary. If you were a Democrat or an independent who wanted to cross a line and vote in the Republican primary in Kentucky, you needed to make that decision in December of last year. So if you saw this race heating up and you said, man, I really would like to go support this Massie feller, you didn't have that opportunity. You couldn't do it if you were a Democrat or an independent. You already had to state your priors all the way back in December before anyone realized this was actually going to be a contest. And in that light, after having $18 million spent, and it's probably going to come up higher before we're done, against him. There's a $35 million total in the race, 18 against him. Tom Massie comes out with 46%. And I think we shouldn't ignore the 46% of the loaf we got in this particular case, because it actually equals out to 47,500 voters. And they withstood a withering series of attack ads and campaigns, a whole bunch of it very misleading, a whole bunch of it just garbage, awful. They withstood all of that and stood by Massie as their representative. And so I throw out the following thing, keeping in mind that this is just Republicans, no Democrats and independents included, because folks, they vote in general elections too. This is an off-year primary. 47,500 times 435 congressional districts is over 20 million people. Friends and neighbors, Thomas Massie has a base of 20 million people in this country, sitting latent like a sleeping giant, and it's probably bigger than that. And one more thing. They raised over $15 million, his side did, for this race. In response, most of that money came from outside the district. For a presidential run, which I anticipate is potentially in his future, that number could be 20, 25 million, I suspect, which would be, if it's at 25 million, would be double what Libertarians ever ran and 3 times or 4 times more than most of their campaigns ever ran. There's only one campaign that raised half that, and that was Gary Johnson's campaign. And then you're going to say to me, well, Jim, there's no way he's going to win.
Jim, there's
Yes.
no way he's going to win.
So what? You know who isn't going to win? The next Republican nominee.
So he will tank the Republican nominee.
Yep. And the whole MAGA movement's all over. So gloat, enjoy your time today. This is Waterloo. You just don't realize it yet. You won a really significant battle. But like Obi-Wan Kenobi said, if you cut me down, I will come back stronger. And that's exactly the position that Tom Massie's in if he chooses to be in it now.
So he's got a lot of support there. I'm getting all kinds of mixed messages from listeners. Some who hated Massie and thought he turned on the president, or somebody sent me a message saying that he was getting money from China or something. Others have accused him of making votes that I looked up and he didn't make. It's interesting to see the split among Republicans about Massie.
I believe that most of the people in MAGA don't have any information or intelligence in terms of like how politics works, what the issues are, none of that. What I believe they care about far and away more than anything is that for years and years and years, nobody fought, nobody made the libs cry. But this guy's a fighter, and he does. And that's the test that they know he's doing the right thing, is the level of opposition he receives. Politics is war by other means. These people recognize it all the way to their bones, and they say, this guy fights, and everybody else just needs to get in uniform and get in the regiment and follow their orders. They don't want a guy who's going maverick in the middle of a war. They want everyone on the same page. They want him fighting with him. Is he an SOB? Of course, but he's our SOB and he fights. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but you took me to the Pachyderm Club when I was in town. And we went over it. Roy will remember this really well. He brings it up every so often to me. And that day, after we did the radio show and we had that luncheon with the Pachyderm Club, I went in and said bad things about John Boehner. The focus of my talk was how bad John Boehner was. I'm taking down the then Speaker of the House and the most prominent Republican, given that Obama was the president. And I didn't get a single negative response. Everybody, in fact, came up and shook my hand and thanked me for saying and told me how much they agreed with it. That's the response I got. Not one person raised an objection to the fact that I was taking on John Boehner. The problem in this party's been there for a long time. They've been waiting for years for somebody to come along and settle scores and make things right. They've wanted a fight, and they've got a guy who will fight, and they don't want to risk, because it took so long to find him, losing it. I think that's their rationale. I don't think it's anything more complicated than that. I definitely know, given some of the things that you just described, it ain't sophisticated.
That's interesting. There are people. I keep thinking of Richard Nixon and its silent majority nonsense, but I think there is. If I come out and I say Trump did this and it was good, Trump did that and it was bad, they don't remember the first part. They only remember the second part. And then I'm a never Trumper. And then they start attacking me because I'm not on board. I'm not. So
you've been experiencing the Tom Massie phenomenon the whole time.
Oh, you'd be surprised at some of the stuff that I've been subjected to. They want Republican talking points. They want administration talking points. They don't want anything.
Even if they were different from yesterday. It's whatever the president believes today, because this is about the fight.
Well, if the president changes his mind, it's because he's playing chess and I'm playing checkers.
Yep.
There's always an excuse.
Mm-hmm. Because it's about the fight. It's been about the fight all along. And the seeds of this were sitting there when I was talking to the Pachyderm Club about John Boehner. They don't want another John Boehner. They don't want to go back to Mitt Romney, the old mittens. They don't want Bob Dole. They don't want any of these guys. They know where they came from. You know, in 1994, the Republicans took over Congress for the first time. I can relate here. Took over Congress for the first time in 40 years, 40 consecutive years. They had been out of power in the U.S. House of Representatives. Newt Gingrich puts out the contract with America. They win a majority. He stands. I remember I was watching this on C-SPAN. He's standing in a high-rise hotel with a window backdrop with the Washington skyline behind him, and he tells the incoming freshmen who had just won their seats, he says, Article 1, Section 8 says that if we defund these programs, the very nice people that work in these buildings behind us will go home. They got up and gave a standing ovation. I got up and gave a standing ovation. And then what happened next? They grabbed defeat out of the jaws of victory, and they picked Bob Dole to be their nominee.
I was there.
And every one of there's a group of people rightfully upset that nothing ever happened. They've delivered electoral victories to this party again and again and again, and nothing happened. And you get caught up in this war fever, and eventually you start to lose sight of your principles, and you start to think the whole thing is about making the other side cry. And that explains a lot of where we're at today. But please, please, please don't miss. First they fight. First they ignore you. Then they mock and ridicule. Then they fight you, which is where we're at right now. And then you win. There is a nearly half a loaf here that could be the secret to the future. We are further along than we realize, dear libertarians.
Message here from James in Eldon. Jim Babka is why libertarians are disliked. You don't get your way, so you're going to burn it down.
I'm not burning anything down. You understand this? Austin Peterson is out talking about this race. What he doesn't know could fill an ocean. He's suggesting that basically what Massie needed to do was be quiet and submissive to the president. What, on Iran? On spending, on the national debt, or even on pedophiles? Like, he's supposed to be silent on these things? He's just supposed to go along with it? Nearly every Republican, they all have short memories. I shouldn't say all of them. A lot of them have short memories. Forgets that they very, very much wanted the Epstein files out in 2024. All he's done is stick to the president's campaign promises. His campaign promises that got him elected, that put this coalition together. It's all he's done. That's all he's done.